My name is Fiona Monroe, and I'm 33 years old. When I was 11, my mom taped a $20 bill to the refrigerator, kissed the air next to my cheek, and flew to Europe for a month. 6 frozen casseroles, 1 list of chores, 1 neighbor who was supposed to check on me and never knew she'd been volunteered. 6 weeks later, my mom finally came home with a suitcase full of duty-free perfume and found an empty house, a county seal on the front door, and a piece of paper that made her scream in the driveway. No, no, this can't be happening. That's what she said, right there on the porch, loud enough for the whole street. But that scream wasn't the end of it. What happened in a courtroom 4 months later, none of them saw that coming. Least of all her. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge, where family secrets come to light, and the people everyone underestimated finally get their say. Before we start, tell me where you're listening from tonight. Drop it in the comments. And if stories like this one hit home, make sure you subscribe, because you won't want to miss what comes next. Marlow Creek, Ohio, 2004. Population 4,000 and change, 1 stoplight, 1 library, and a 2-story house on Cedar Street with paint the color of weak coffee. That was us. I was 11, and I ran that house the way other kids ran lemonade stands. I woke myself with a wind-up alarm clock I'd bought at a church sale for 50 cents. I made the coffee before my mom's feet hit the floor, because mornings went smoother when the kitchen already smelled like it. I knew which bills lived under which magnet on the refrigerator, and I knew their due dates better than I knew my times tables. Gas by the 5th, electric by the 12th. My dad, Tom Monroe, died of a heart attack when I was 7, and somewhere between the funeral and the next school year, I got promoted. Nobody announced it. I just became the backup adult. My mom, Denise, was 36 and beautiful in a way that made cashiers nervous. She had a laugh she saved for other people and a phrase she saved for me. She'd watch me fold laundry, or sign myself up for the science fair, or remind her about parent-teacher night, and she'd shake her head like I was a coupon she'd found in a coat pocket. "You're the easiest kid in the world," she'd say. I collected that sentence the way other girls collected stickers. Here's a detail I've never told anyone. By 4th grade, I could write my mother's signature better than she could. I never used it. I just practiced. In pencil, in the back of my math notebook. Because some part of me already understood that in our house, being prepared was the same thing as being loved. There was one door in my life that stayed shut, though. Nobody ever talked about my dad's side of the family. I didn't know why yet. Rick Calloway had been my stepfather for about a year by then. He sold things. What things depended on the month? Vending machine routes, discount vitamins, a stretch where our garage was full of Italian espresso makers that never worked twice. He called himself an importer. He wore a gold watch that he checked when other people were talking. My mom loved him the way you love a lottery ticket, and that September he came home waving the jackpot. A month-long trip to Europe. Paris, then Rome, then some coastline he pronounced differently every time. He said it was for business, meeting suppliers, and that they'd fold in the honeymoon they never took. My mom lit up like somebody had finally changed her bulb. For 2 weeks the house filled with tissue paper and new sandals and phrases like travel wardrobe. She hummed. She hadn't hummed since before my dad died. I sat on the stairs one night watching her fold a sundress into tissue paper like it was a newborn, and I asked the question as small as I could make it. "Can I come?" She didn't even look up. "It's adult time, sweetheart. Planes cost money." Then she smiled at the suitcase, and the conversation was over. I want to be fair here, because fair matters to me. It didn't feel like cruelty. It felt like weather. You don't argue with rain, you just get a coat. So I did what I always did. I started planning. School schedule, casserole math, which lights to leave off. At dinner, Rick tipped back in his chair and told my mom not to worry about a thing while they were gone. "I handled the bills," he said, and his smile sat crooked on his face, like a picture frame somebody had bumped walking past. They left on October 3rd, a Sunday, at 10:15 in the morning. I know because I stood at the window and watched the clock on the mantel while the taxi idled. The countdown had a ceremony to it, like a launch. My mom walked me through the kitchen one last time, heels clicking, perfume trailing her like a bridal train. 6 casseroles in the freezer, each labeled in her loopy handwriting, week 1, week 2. As if 6 dinners divided into 31 days without a remainder. A list on the counter. Water the ferns, bring in the mail, lock both locks. Then she lifted a magnet shaped like a little cow and pinned a folded $20 bill under it, right at my eye level. For emergencies, she said. Mrs. Hutchins next door will look in on you. She said it breezily, the way you'd say the forecast. Rick honked from the driveway. My mom crouched down, pressed a kiss into the air beside my cheek, and held my shoulders at arm's length like she was checking a mirror. You're the easiest kid in the world, she said. Then the door, the gravel, the taxi's brake lights at the corner. I stood at the window and counted to 100, because I'd decided that if she looked back before I hit 100, it meant something. She never turned around. Not at 50, not at 90. The taxi swung left onto Route 9 and the street went quiet in a way I can still hear. I was 11 years old, standing in a house with 2 locked locks and a cow magnet guarding $20, and the first thing I did, I swear this is true, was wash her coffee cup. Chore 1, 31 days to go. By Monday night, I had a system, because of course I did. I ruled a page of my math notebook into 31 boxes and gave every box a dinner. 6 casseroles didn't stretch that far, even cut small, so the gaps got filled in pencil. Cereal, toast, peanut butter. I made rules the way other kids made forts. Lights out by 9 to keep the electric bill kind. School breakfast every morning, because 35 cents was the best deal in Marlow Creek. Homework at the kitchen table before dark, teeth brushed by flashlight after, because flashlights felt like camping instead of alone. Tuesday evening, I took the spare key and walked next door to Mrs. Hutchins' place, mostly so somebody on Earth would officially know I existed. I knocked. Nothing. The porch light was off, and not off like she forgot. Off like nobody had needed it in a while. The Buick was gone from the carport, and 3 rolled newspapers lay yellowing by the step. I stood there a long minute doing arithmetic I didn't want to do. Newspapers pile up at 1 a day. There were a lot more than 3 under the hedge. I found out later, from the caseworker's report, that Mrs. Hutchins had gone to her son's place in Fort Myers 2 full weeks before my mom's taxi ever pulled out of our driveway. My mom never actually asked her to watch me. She just liked how the sentence sounded on her way out the door. I walked back across the grass, let myself in, turned both locks, and stood in the hallway listening to the refrigerator hum. It was the only other voice in the house. That was the night I understood the real math of that October. Not one adult on the planet knew I was alone. $20 sounds like something when you're 11. It stops sounding like something at the Marlow Creek IGA on a Wednesday, with a wire basket and a pencil stub. Milk, 99 cents. Bread, 79. Eggs, $1.05. Peanut butter, the store brand with the lid that never sat straight, $1.69. I did the subtraction in the aisle before the register so there would never, ever be a moment where the cashier had to take something back out of my basket. Pride has a budget too. I wrote every purchase in the back of the math notebook, next to my practice signatures, because numbers held still when I looked at them, and nothing else that month did. I called my mom's cell phone exactly once, that first week. It rang strange. 2 long foreign purrs, then a voicemail greeting in a language I didn't know. I hung up without leaving a message. She'd told me before she left that calls from Europe cost a fortune, and fortune was a word I took seriously, standing in a kitchen where the 20 was already down to $15.48. Thursday, a postcard came. The Eiffel Tower at sunset, gold lights on gray sky. On the back, in her loopy hand, having the time of our lives. Kisses. And then my name. She spelled it Fiona. 2 N's. I stood at the mailbox and read my own name spelled wrong by the woman who picked it. And I did what I did with everything that year. I filed it, Put the postcard on the refrigerator under the cow magnet, right next to the 20. Decoration and emergency fund side by side. The ferns got watered. The mail came in. The boxes got checked. One dinner at a time. School was the easy part, which tells you something about the rest. I'd always been a teacher's dream kid. Homework in on time, hand raised at the right speed. Never so brilliant or so much trouble that anyone looked twice. That October, I turned it into a craft. Picture day came second week. The envelope wanted $12 I didn't have to spare. I told Miss Andrews my mom forgot to sign the form, said it with a little eye roll. Mom's, you know. And she laughed and moved down the row. The field trip form for the Science Center needed a parent's signature by Friday. I could have written one. I had the skill. I'd practiced that signature into a fine art. But some line in me wouldn't move. So instead, I just brought the form home and let it sit on the counter like it was waiting for her too. Told the teacher we'd turn it in next week. Kept my hair neater than usual. Kept my lunch account fed with quarters from the emergency 20, a little at a time. So the number on the lunch lady's screen never went red. Being perfect, it turns out, is the best hiding place there is. Nobody audits a straight-A girl with a tidy ponytail. But twice that week, I felt it. Miss Andrews's eyes staying on me half a second past normal, the way you look at a picture that's hanging almost straight. Once she asked, "Everything good at home, Fiona?" And I gave her the smile I'd been rehearsing since I was 7. "Yes, ma'am. Mom's just busy." She nodded and turned back to the board, and I sat there with my heart going like a rabbit, equal parts terrified she'd ask again and, this is the part that took me 20 years to admit, hoping she would. The envelope was already in the mailbox on day 6, but I didn't understand it until day 9. Red stripe across the top. Final disconnect notice. I knew our bills the way I knew my spelling words, and this one said the electric hadn't been paid in 2 months. August, September, gone, before the taxi ever came. Rick had handled the bills the way he handled the espresso machines. I counted the 20s remains on the kitchen table. $13 and change against a past due balance of $141. There are problems an 11-year-old can solve with a pencil, and there are problems that just have to land. On the 9th of October, at 6 in the evening, the refrigerator stopped humming mid-note. The kitchen light died over my homework. The house went so quiet I could hear the clock in the living room, and then I couldn't hear anything except my own breathing, because I was 11 and the dark in your own house is a different species of dark. I did not panic. I want that on the record. I found the flashlight, wore 2 sweaters, moved the milk to the back porch where October could keep it cold. The answering machine by the couch died with everything else, a little red eye going out. And I remember thinking, good, one less light bill. I had no idea what that dead machine was about to cost me. People ask me now why I didn't just tell someone. Here's the thing about being 11. You don't protect yourself. You protect the family. You keep the secret to keep the peace. If you've ever done that, kept quiet so the walls would stay up, tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And subscribe, because what that $20 had to cover next, you'll want to hear. The casseroles went bad on a Tuesday. All the food a dead freezer had been guarding surrendered at once, and I carried it out to the trash in 3 trips, holding my breath, apologizing to nobody. Week 3, lasagna, gone. Week 4, chicken and rice, gone. The pencil boxes in my notebook got redrawn again. Breakfast became the anchor meal. 35 cents at school bought a tray with milk, and if you offered to help Miss Loretta wipe tables afterward, sometimes a second carton found its way to you without anyone calling it charity. Lunch was the account I kept fed with dwindling quarters. Dinner was peanut butter, counted in spoons. I got good at the timing of hunger, the way it crests, and then gets bored if you ignore it. $9.50 left. After school, I stopped going home, because home was dark and 48 degrees. I went to the Marlow Creek Public Library instead, which was warm and bright and smelled like paper and floor wax, and stayed until Miss Ellen Park flicked the lobby lights at 8. I did my homework at the corner table by the radiator. I read half the dog books in the children's section, and Miss Ellen, 45, cardigan, reading glasses on a beaded chain, started noticing things I thought I'd hidden. She never asked a single question. She just started leaving a granola bar on the returns cart near my table and saying, loud enough for the room, "Program leftovers. Somebody help me clear these before they go stale." I helped her clear them. Every night. Two people can hold a secret without either one saying it out loud, and that month, Miss Ellen and I held mine together. She was the first grown-up who saw me. She would not be the last. The cold got into me the third week. The water heater ran on electricity, which meant the shower ran on courage, and October in Ohio does not negotiate. I washed my hair in water that made my skull ache and told myself pioneer girls did worse. Around day 17, my left ear started to hurt. A deep, underwater kind of hurt, like a thumb pressing from the inside. I found a bottle of children's Tylenol in the medicine cabinet, 2 years expired, and took the dose printed for kids under 12, because the label was the only adult left in the house, and I was raised to follow instructions. School became a balance problem. Staying home was out of the question. An absence meant the office calling home, and the office calling home meant the machine, and the machine was dead. So I went. I sat in class with my ear roaring like a seashell and multiplied fractions and raised my hand at the right speed. At night, I slept on the couch with my dad's old canvas work coat over the blankets. It still smelled faintly of him, engine grease and cedar, and I'd lie there under that smell with my ear throbbing in time with my heart, running the numbers. $4.75. 14 days if she came home on time. I could make 14 days. I had made 17 already, and nobody knew, which in my 11-year-old accounting meant nobody was in trouble, which meant the family was safe, which meant I was winning. Day 19 is when the first crack showed, and it didn't come for me. It came through the front office of Marlow Creek Elementary on a Thursday morning in the form of a phone call. Not for me, about me. It was the lunch account that finally opened its mouth. My balance had scraped bottom despite the quarters, and the cafeteria system did what systems do. It flagged, and the office dialed the home number on file. The call rang into a dead answering machine in a dark living room, and nobody ever knew the difference. So they dialed again Friday. Then they mailed a letter, which I carried in from the mailbox myself, and set on the counter next to the field trip form, the two of them lying there like unexploded ordnance. Monday, Miss Andrews caught me at the coat hooks, voice low. "We've been trying to reach your mom, hun. Everything all right at home?" I looked her dead in the eye, 11 years old, ear howling, $4 in my mitten, and delivered the finest performance of my young life. "Yes, ma'am. Mom's just busy. She works a lot." She studied me a beat too long, then nodded. I walked to my desk on legs made of chalk. That same afternoon, the second postcard came. Rome this time, the Colosseum, orange in the evening light, postmarked 3 days earlier. On the back, her loopy hand, cheerful as a parade, extending 2 more weeks. Rome is magic. Be good. Kisses. I stood at the mailbox and read it twice, because the first time the words wouldn't land. 2 more weeks. The 31 boxes in my notebook were already a graveyard, and she'd just added 14 plots, from a cafe table somewhere, between the magic and the kisses. I remember exactly what I did next. I walked inside, put Rome under the cow magnet next to Paris, sat down at the kitchen table in my coat, and sharpened my pencil. The math had stopped working days ago. I sharpened it anyway. The coldest night of that October, I moved into the hall closet. It sounds worse than it was, or maybe it was exactly as bad as it sounds, and I've just had 20 years to sand it down. The closet was the smallest space in the house, which made it the warmest, and I dragged in the couch cushions and every blanket we owned and my dad's canvas coat on top like a roof. $4.75 sat folded in my left mitten, and I wore the mitten because losing that money had started showing up in my dreams. The fever came on that night the way dusk comes. You can't point to the minute it happened, only notice the light is gone. I woke before the alarm, aching in the joints, ear screaming, and got up anyway. Brushed my teeth by flashlight. braided my hair by feel. I stood in the bathroom mirror holding the flashlight under my chin like a campfire story and said it out loud to my own gray face. Easiest kid in the world. It had always been my mother's compliment. That morning, it sounded like something you'd read at the bottom of a warranty. Terms and conditions. The fine print you agree to just by existing quietly. I put on both sweaters and my coat and walked to school through frost, breathing carefully around the pain, doing what I had done for 23 days. Showing up, filling in the boxes, being no trouble at all. The trick to carrying something too heavy is to never, ever set it down, because you already know you won't be able to pick it back up. I made it through the front doors. I made it through homeroom. I made it to third period. Third period was gym, volleyball, of all the ordinary things. I remember the squeak of sneakers on varnish and the smell of rubber and dust, and then the floor doing a slow, polite quarter turn under my feet, like a dance partner. The ceiling lights smeared. Somebody's voice went long and stretched. Fiona! And the gym floor came up to meet me warm as bathwater. What I know of the next hour, I know from other people. Mrs. Baker, the school nurse, put a thermometer in my ear, the good ear, and read 103.1. My other ear had begun to leak, which is what an eardrum does when it gives up waiting. She called the number on file and listened to it ring into a dead machine. She called the second contact, listed as R. Calloway, and got a robot voice saying the number was no longer in service. She called the emergency contact, a Mrs. Hutchins, and let it ring 11 times into a Florida kitchen 1,000 miles away. Then she looked over my chart at Principal Whitmore, who had quietly come to stand in the doorway, and what passed between them was the sentence neither of them said in front of me. They were mandated reporters. They mandated. The ambulance took me out the side entrance during fourth period so the other kids wouldn't see, which was the first professional courtesy of my new life. Somewhere on Route 9, a paramedic named Doug tucked a heated blanket around me, and I told him, "This is documented. It's in the run report." I told him, "Don't call my mom. It costs a fortune." He patted my shoulder and said, real gentle, "Kiddo, you let us worry about the bill." County General kept me 2 nights, IV antibiotics, fluids, a specialist for the ear who used the word ruptured the way carpenters use the word rotten, factually, already thinking about the repair. Nurses came in stacks, and every single one of them was kind to me, and I was so unpracticed at being on the receiving end of care that I kept trying to tidy the tray table. The second morning, a woman came in without a clipboard leading the way. Mid-30s, dark hair yanked into a bun that had lost the fight, lanyard flipped backward. Marisol Vega, Child Protective Services. She did something no adult had done in a long time. She pulled the chair close and sat down low, so I was looking down at her, not up. She asked about the dog books I had stacked on the blanket. We talked about beagles for 10 entire minutes. Then, same easy voice. "When did your mom leave, Fiona?" And I heard myself say, smooth as a hymn, "She's at the store." Marisol didn't blink. She didn't write anything down. She just waited. The way Miss Ellen waited. The way people wait when they already know and are giving you the dignity of saying it yourself. I looked at the ceiling tiles. Somewhere in that silence, 24 days of arithmetic came due all at once. October 3rd, I said. She left $20. Marisol nodded slowly, like I'd said something reasonable, and then she said the sentence that rearranged my whole interior. $20, 24 days. You did everything right, Fiona, and it was never your job. She asked if there was any family anywhere, anyone at all. I gave her the only name I had, a name from a funeral when I was 7. Grandma Ruth. My dad's mom. Mom said she moved away. Ruth Monroe had not moved away. She was 40 minutes north on County Road 12, on 11 acres with chickens and a part-time shift at the Hartwell Post Office, exactly where she'd been my whole life. Marisol found her in an afternoon. The background check took 2 days, which I spent at a receiving home with bunk beds and a lady who made pancakes shaped like lopsided hearts, and then a state sedan carried me up a gravel driveway toward a porch where a tall woman in a barn coat stood gripping the rail like it owed her money. In her kitchen, later, I'd learn the rest. Every birthday card she'd mailed me for 4 years, returned unopened, rubber banded together in a cookie tin. But that comes later, because first there's the part you came for. November 12th, day 40. An airport taxi pulls up to the house on Cedar Street, and my mother steps out sun-browned and glossy, duty-free bags rustling, Rick behind her wrestling the luggage. She's still got her sunglasses pushed up in her hair. Neighbors saw it all. Marlow Creek has a long memory and longer windows. She reaches the porch and stops. The county notice is taped across the door seam. Official blue. Case number. Do not remove. With Marisol's card stapled to the corner and a summons underneath. My bedroom curtains upstairs are hanging open on a room she can see straight through. Bed stripped, closet cleaned out by a caseworker's gloved hands. And my mother, Denise, drops her duty-free bags on the porch boards and folds in half like the air's been let out of her. And out it comes, loud enough that Mrs. Peterson across the street heard it over her television. No, this can't be happening. 40 days. That's how long it took her to notice I was gone. The 20, for the record, was still in my mitten. $4.75 of it, anyway. My first night on the farm, Ruth made chicken and dumplings from scratch, and the whole house smelled like something I didn't have a word for yet. She didn't ask me questions with knives in them. She asked if I liked butter on my bread and whether I was a top bunk or bottom bunk kind of girl. And she showed me to a room at the top of the stairs with model airplanes still hanging from the ceiling on fishing line. My dad's room, his bed, his view of the barn. After supper, I did what I was built to do. Cleared the table, ran the water, had a plate half scrubbed before she'd even stood up. Ruth came over and turned off the tap. She took the dish towel out of my hands the way you'd take scissors from a sleepwalker, gentle and absolutely final, and she looked at me down her long Monroe nose and said, "You can sleep. I'm not going anywhere." I didn't believe her. I want to be honest about that. I lay in my dad's bed under a quilt that weighed as much as a dog and stayed awake 2 full hours waiting for the catch, for the list of chores that love was going to cost here, the terms and conditions. The house just creaked and stayed warm. Somewhere downstairs, a clock ticked with nobody making it mean anything. In the morning, there were eggs from actual chickens and a cookie tin on the table. Inside, rubber-banded 4 years of birthday cards. To Fiona, age 8. To Fiona, age 9. Every envelope stamped return to sender in my mother's handwriting. "I never missed one," Ruth said, filling my plate. "They just never let me reach you." All those years I'd thought nobody on my dad's side wanted me. Somebody had wanted me the whole time. By certified mail. My mother called the farm 9 days after she landed. Ruth held out the phone, one eyebrow up, hand over the mouthpiece. "You don't have to." I took it anyway. Hope is a habit like any other. My mom's voice came through in its warmest register, the one she used on loan officers. "Baby, this has all been blown so out of proportion. You were fine, weren't you? You're always fine." A pause. Sugar over steel. "When they ask you, tell them you were fine. You're my easy girl. Don't ruin this family." There it was. The job posting for my old position. I stood in Ruth's kitchen with the phone against my good ear and, for a second, 24 days of flashlight nights folded up small, and the old reflex reached for the old script. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." I said I had homework and hung up. Meanwhile, in town, my mother got to work on the audience that mattered. She showed up at First Methodist that Sunday in a gray dress with a collar like a pilgrim, eyes down, voice soft, telling anyone within earshot about the sitter who canceled last minute, the messages that never reached her, the tragedy of misunderstanding. And here's what still fascinates me. Some of them believed her. A woman that put together, that well-spoken, with a casserole dish in her hands. A mother like that doesn't abandon a child. She just has bad luck. That's the arithmetic the town knew how to do. Then, the week of Thanksgiving, the county prosecutor filed a charge, endangering children, and my mother's lawyer explained the new math to her. A mother fighting hard to win her daughter back looks a great deal better to a sentencing judge than one who shrugs. If you've ever watched somebody perform love for an audience, you know this feeling. Tell me about it in the comments. And stay with me. The courtroom is coming. The dependency case opened in December, and life settled into a strange new rhythm with a courtroom at the end of it. I enrolled at Hartwell Elementary, where nobody knew my story, and a girl named Becca traded me half her sandwich for math help like it was the most normal thing in the world. Wednesdays were visit day, 1 hour at the CPS office, in a room with soft chairs and a one-way window and toys meant for kids much younger than me. My mother arrived at the first visit 15 minutes early, a first in recorded history, carrying a teddy bear the size of a toddler and a shopping bag from the mall with 3 sweaters in my size. She hugged me long enough for it to land in Marisol's notes. She called me her whole world, twice, at a volume calibrated for the observation window. And I sat there in the soft chair with the bear on my lap, watching my own mother the way I used to watch my spelling words, checking for errors. The performance was good. I want to give her that. The tears arrived on schedule and departed clean, no smeared mascara, and every anecdote landed with her as the heartbroken heroine of a story where the villain was a telephone. If I hadn't lived with her, I'd have believed her. That's the thing nobody tells you about charming people. The charm is real. It's just not for you. It's for the room. On the drive home, Ruth asked how it went. I looked out at the frozen fields going by and said, "She was really good." Ruth's hand stayed steady on the wheel. She said, which in Ruth was a full paragraph. The next visit, my mother stopped performing, and that was worse. Third visit, she came empty-handed, no bear, no bag, and for once, no audience voice. She sat across the little table and looked at her own manicure like it belonged to someone else, and then my mother told me a story I'd never heard in 11 years of being her daughter. Her mother, a grandmother I'd never met, died of cancer when my mom was 12. Her father came home from the funeral, poured a drink, and more or less never fully stood back up. So the 12-year-old ran the house, cooked, cleaned, forged his signature on report cards, hid the bottles before school, woke him for work by pouring out half the whiskey so the shakes wouldn't be so bad. Nobody helped. Nobody called anybody. They didn't call it neglect back then, she said, looking straight at me for once. No glaze, no shine. They called me capable. It made me strong, Fiona. I thought, and her voice caught on something real. I'd bet my life on it. I thought I was giving you what it gave me. One tear got loose, an unofficial one, and she wiped it fast like it had embarrassed her. And here is my confession. I almost went around that table. My hand actually moved, because I could see her, 12 years old, watering down whiskey in a cold kitchen, being called capable by people who should have been calling for help. My mother had been me. Nobody came for her, and she grew up believing that's what childhood was, a test you pass alone. Then the hour ended and she straightened her collar, and the shine came back down over her eyes like a shop shutter. "So you'll tell the judge this was a misunderstanding," she said. "Right, baby." And my hand came back to my side of the table. In January, Ruth and I met with Carol Whitfield, the guardian ad litem, a retired teacher with reading glasses and a folder she squared against the table edge like she was calling a class to order. Her job was to recommend what was best for me, and she believed in showing her work. So she walked us through what the county had assembled, plain as a weather report. The electric company's log, final disconnect notice mailed September 28th, 5 days before the taxi. The school's log, 6 calls to the home number, 2 letters, no response. Then the page that changed the temperature of the room. The school, it turned out, had gotten further than anyone knew. The district office tracked down the hotel in Rome through the travel agency and sent a fax on day 18, unable to reach parent/guardian of Fiona Monroe, Please contact school urgently. Delivery confirmed by the hotel's front desk. Guests notified. And stapled behind it, the airline record. On day 20, 2 days after that fax, my mother and Rick changed their return tickets. Not toward home, away from it. 2 more weeks. Rome is magic. I sat very still in Carol Whitfield's office doing the one thing I have always been able to do under any conditions: the math. Day 18, she knew. Day 20, she chose. The postcard hadn't been cluelessness in loopy handwriting. It was an answer. Some math you do with a pencil. Some math does you. Ruth reached over and put one weathered hand flat on my back, right between the shoulder blades, and left it there. No words, just ballast, while a kind stranger in reading glasses squared her folder and quietly moved my mother from the column marked careless into the column marked chose. That distinction was about to matter enormously. Rick solved himself, the way men like Rick do. Somewhere between the charge being filed and the holidays, he loaded the espresso machines and the gold watch into his Bronco and rediscovered a pressing business opportunity in Chicago. He left my mother the mortgage, the lawyer bills, and the consequences. The only 3 things he ever let her keep. With him gone, her legal strategy sharpened into something almost elegant. Her attorney's argument, repeated to anyone with a gavel or a notepad. Denise is a devoted mother, victim of an unreliable spouse, and a breakdown in communication, fighting tirelessly for reunification with her daughter. I learned the word optics that winter, standing outside a cracked door I should have walked past. Marisol was in Ruth's kitchen, coffee going cold, voice low. "I've been doing this 11 years, she said. The custody fight isn't about Fiona, it's about sentencing. If the family court believes she's Mother of the Year, the criminal court goes easier. Fiona is character evidence." Ruth said something I didn't catch, and Marisol answered, "Then we make sure the judge hears the child, not the strategy." I stood in the hallway with my back against the wallpaper, doing my quiet arithmetic. I had spent my whole life being useful to my mother: coffee, bills, silence. Now, at the end of everything, I was useful one final way, as a prop in her sentencing memo. You'd think that would have made me angry, and eventually it did. But standing in that hallway, 11 years old, what I felt was almost like relief. The relief of a puzzle finally showing its picture. The disposition hearing was set for the last week of February. Whatever I said in that room, or didn't say, was going to decide where my whole life happened next. The last visit before the hearing, my mother played her final card, and it was aces. The hour was ending. Marisol stepped out to sign us both through the desk, and for about 90 seconds in that beige hallway, it was just the 2 of us for the first time since the taxi. My mother knelt down. Actually knelt. Eye level, hands on my shoulders. And I realized with a small electric shock that I could not remember her ever doing that before. "Listen to me, baby," she said, and her voice was the true one, the rare one, the one from before Rick, and maybe from before my dad died. "Choose me at the hearing. Tell them you want to come home, and it all goes away. We'll sell the house, just you and me. We'll move somewhere nobody knows us. Fresh start." Her thumb brushed my cheek. "Paris someday. I'll show you the tower. You're my girl, Fiona. Mine. And I need you to understand what she had just done, because it took me years to see the size of it." She had reached into me with surgical precision and pulled out the exact dream I had been praying at for 11 years. Her and me, no audience. A mother with room in her life for the easiest kid in the world. Word for word. The dream. The worst part wasn't that I didn't believe her. The worst part was that I still wanted to. Wanting doesn't die of evidence. I had a mitten full of evidence, and my chest still pulled toward her like water finding a drain. Marisol's shoes squeaked at the end of the hallway. My mother rose smoothly, patted my collar flat, and was fully back in costume by the time the door opened. 4 days until the hearing. Ruth never once told me what to say. I want that in the record because the court wondered, and the lawyer asked, and the answer is, not once. What she did instead, 2 nights before the hearing, was take me up to my dad's room and sit on the end of his bed under the model airplanes and tell me one story. My dad, Tom, age 11, my exact age, borrowed his father's good fishing rod without asking and snapped the tip clean off. Scared of the whipping he figured was coming, he hid in the chicken coop and wouldn't come out. Wouldn't answer. Ruth found him by his sneaker toes under the roost door, and instead of hollering him out of there, she took a kitchen chair, set it outside the coop door, and sat. All night. Didn't call in, didn't threaten, didn't leave. Just sat where he could see her shadow under the door, so he'd know the one thing that mattered. Whenever he decided to come out, somebody would still be there. He came out at dawn. Nobody whipped anybody. The rod got fixed with a brass ferrule, and it's in the barn to this day. She showed me. Then Ruth looked up at those airplanes turning slow on their fishing line and said the closest thing to a closing argument she ever gave me. Whatever you say Thursday, this door doesn't close. You come out when you're ready. I'll be sitting right here. I slept that night like I hadn't slept since October, and in the morning I asked her for something. Asked, out loud, for a thing I needed, which sounds small unless you've been the kid who never asks for anything. At the hearing, I said, "Will you sit where I can see you?" The day before the hearing, Carol Whitfield came to the farm to walk me through it. No witness stand, she explained. I was 11, not on trial. Judge Hartley liked to talk with kids in chambers, a office with a low table, just him, her, and me. You don't have to choose anything or anyone, she said, squaring her folder. You can say nothing at all. But if you do want to speak, Fiona, the court will listen. He will actually listen. After she left, I did the thing I do. I prepared. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror the way I used to stand with the flashlight under my chin, and I practiced saying true things out loud, and I learned something nobody warns you about. The truth has a cost even when it's the right answer. Every time I got to the middle of it, my throat closed. Because here is what the truth meant. All the way down. If I told that judge what October was, I wasn't just describing my mother. I was ending her. The charges, the town, the sentencing. My sentences were going to become her sentence. Some girl somewhere gets to be 11 and worry about spelling tests. I stood in a farmhouse bathroom rehearsing the removal of my own mother, and the mirror didn't blink. And neither did I. And don't you dare call that easy. Before bed, I took something from the cookie tin where I'd started keeping my important things, and I folded it into the chest pocket of my good dress for the morning, and I buttoned the pocket flat. Ruth didn't ask what it was. She just checked the button, the way grandmothers do, and turned off the light. The juvenile courtroom of Braxton County was smaller than my classroom. Dark paneling, the Ohio flag drooping by a radiator that clanked like a man clearing his throat, a wall clock you could hear between sentences. No jury box, no gallery of strangers, just 2 tables, a bench, and the handful of adults my life had come down to. Judge Hartley, 58, with a face like a farmer at an auction, giving nothing. Carol Whitfield with her squared folder. Marisol in her good blazer. My mother at one table in the gray pilgrim dress. Hair in a low, humble knot her hairdresser had absolutely charged for. Her lawyer beside her, cufflinks winking. And at the back, exactly where the sightline from every chair in the room could find her, Ruth Monroe in her church cardigan, sitting where I could see her. Right where she said she'd be. The lawyer went first, and he was good. The way expensive things are good. Devoted mother. Perfect storm of miscommunication. An unreliable husband since departed. A child who, he actually said this, thrived independently, a testament to the values instilled in her. I watched my mother while he painted us. She held the pose the whole time, hands folded, chin soft, a portrait titled Motherhood Wronged. She had rehearsed too. It takes one to know one. I'd rehearsed in a bathroom mirror. She'd rehearsed in one of her own, and only one of us was going to be asked for the truth today. Judge Hartley let the lawyer finish every last coat of paint. Then he took off his reading glasses, looked at Carol Whitfield, and said the sentence I'd been counting toward for 4 months. "I'd like to hear from Fiona now." Chambers was a plain office with law books and a low round table, and Judge Hartley did something I will remember until I die. He took off the black robe and hung it on a hook before he sat down. "It makes me look like a bat," he said. "This is just a conversation, Fiona." Carol Whitfield sat to my left with her folder closed. He asked about Hartwell Elementary, about the chickens, about whether Ruth's cooking was any good. Then he folded his hands and asked, plain as a neighbor over a fence, "Is there anything you want me to know?" And I unbuttoned my chest pocket and put what was inside on his low table. $4.75. 4 bills gone soft as cloth, and 3 quarters, laid out in a row. "My mom left me $20 and 6 casseroles for a month," I said. I'd practiced keeping my voice level, and it mostly held. "I made it last 24 days. I watered the ferns. I brought in the mail. I went to school every day and I didn't tell anybody because I was protecting our family. I did everything right." The radiator down the hall clanked twice. "And I still woke up in an ambulance." Judge Hartley looked at the money. He didn't touch it. "My Grandma Ruth never gave me anything," I said, "except she's there every morning. Her house has heat and eggs, but that's not why. She sat outside a chicken coop all night once, for my dad, just so he'd know somebody was there when he came out. That's the whole thing, I think. That's what I've been trying to say since October." I looked at Carol Whitfield's closed folder, at my $4.75, and then at the judge, and I gave him the only verdict I had. "My mom says she loves me, and I believe her. But loving me from Rome isn't a home. I want to live where someone stays." I asked, out loud, in my own words on the record, "To live with Ruth Monroe. And I want to be exact about this, because it's the hinge of my whole life. Nobody gave me that ending. I chose it. And I paid for it, and both of those are mine." Back in the small courtroom, Judge Hartley put his robe on and made it official in the flat, merciful language of courts. Legal custody of the minor child granted to the paternal grandmother, Ruth Monroe. Visitation for the mother contingent on completion of a parenting program. Case reviewed in 1 year. Gavel like a knuckle on a door. And my mother, my beautiful, composed, twice-rehearsed mother, came up out of her chair as if the verdict had a temperature. "No, no, this can't be happening." Same words as the porch, same pitch. It occurred to me, in the strange calm floating over that afternoon, that I had now heard my mother's honest voice exactly twice, and both times it was grief for something being taken from her, and neither time was it me. Her lawyer got a hand on her arm. The hallway is where it finished. Terrazzo floor, buzzing light, 5 people within earshot. Marisol, Carol, 2 clerks, and Ruth. My mother crossed to me, mask half hung, and tried the last door. "After everything I gave you," she said, and then her voice dropped out of performance entirely, down to the flat, true register, and she handed me the sentence I've carried ever since. "You were easier to love from a distance." The clerks stopped pretending to read their clipboards. I looked up at my mother, and I was 11, and my ear still whistled in cold weather, and I did not raise my voice, because somewhere in the last 4 months I had finally stopped auditioning. "I know, Mom," I said. "That's why I chose the person who came close." Then I took her hand, put the 4 soft bills and 3 quarters into it, and folded her fingers over the top the way she used to fold mine over lunch money. "I kept your change. We're even now." I walked to Ruth. In the truck, I cried the whole 40 minutes, not for the mother I was losing, but for the one I'd finally stopped waiting for. The criminal side wrapped up a month later, quiet as a drawer closing. My mother pleaded to misdemeanor child endangering, 2 years probation, parenting classes, community service at no novelist would dare, a food bank, no jail. The town split the way towns do. Some people crossed the street when they saw her. Some brought her casseroles and called it all bad luck, because a woman that put together That well-dressed? Surely. She finished her probation without a hitch. She was always excellent at completing assignments with an audience. Rick never resurfaced, except once, years later, as a name in a Wisconsin small claims notice somebody left on a bulletin board, which felt about right. And on the farm, spring came. One morning, I found something new stuck to Ruth's refrigerator, pinned under a magnet she must have taken from the Cedar Street kitchen when she picked up my things. The little cow. Under it, the Hartwell school bus schedule, with my route circled in red pen. "So you always know when someone's picking you up," Ruth said, not looking up from her coffee. Same magnet. It used to guard $20. Now it guarded proof that somebody was coming. The years on that farm were not a montage. They were just life. Which is better? Chickens named after country singers. Homework at the big table while Ruth snapped beans. Miss Ellen Park waving me over whenever we drove down to the Marlow Creek Library, a granola bar appearing by my elbow out of pure ceremony. My mother finished her program and used her visitation exactly 4 times the first year, then twice, then Christmas cards that smelled like the perfume counter, signed Mom in handwriting I could have forged better. I always wrote back. Short, polite. Nothing that could be read aloud to an audience as evidence of anything. She remarried in 2008 and moved to Columbus, and the distance she'd always loved me from finally matched her mailing address. I stayed. Graduated from Hartwell High with a nursing scholarship. Ruth sat in the second row and did not wave, because waving was showy. She just sat where I could see her, which by then I understood was the entire language. She died when I was 26, in her sleep, in the house her son grew up in. 3 days after teaching me her dumpling recipe like she was completing a handoff. She kept her promise. She never went anywhere, right up until she had to. At the funeral, half of Hartwell showed up, and I stood at the front, family, and thought about a chair set outside a chicken coop, all night, for a scared kid who broke something. I'm a pediatric ER nurse now, at a county hospital 40 minutes from anywhere, which is the only distance I've ever trusted. Last winter they brought in a girl, 10 years old, pneumonia, clothes washed but worn in the wrong order, and when the intake nurse asked where her mother was, the girl said, "Bright as a bell. She works a lot. I'm fine." I know that dialect. I'm fluent. So I pulled up the low stool and sat down beside the bed, below her eye level, and I asked her about the beagle on her folder sticker, and we talked dogs for 10 entire minutes, and then I stayed, through shift change, through the caseworker's arrival, through the part where her chin finally stopped performing. In my wallet, behind a plastic sleeve, there's a $20 bill. Not that 20. That one I gave back. This is the one Ruth handed me my first week on the farm, just in case. And the just in case never came, because her kitchen never closed. I've carried it for more than 20 years and never broken it. And for the record, I'm still easy. Easy to find. There's a difference. If October taught me anything, it's this. Family isn't the people who leave you $20 and a list. It's the ones who stay close enough that you never have to count what's left. That's my story. $20. 24 days. One librarian who noticed, and one grandmother who stayed. If somebody ever made you feel easier to love from a distance, hear me. That was never about your worth. Check on the quiet kids in your life. The ones performing fine. They're the ones carrying the house. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who stays. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.